This is the Fifth Estate Winning Headlines, your media police post coming to you from Nairobi, Kenya, from the Fort Hall School of Government. In this segment, we summarize some of the headlines that you may have missed this morning, but we also take a look at some of the political pieces that we call cartoons in this country. Today is the 26th of February, 2021, and I am Tua.
I am CS.
And I am GK. In case you missed the headlines, here they are. In the Daily Nation, big split in Ruto camp over BBI. In the Standard, what Uhuru Raila told party leaders. And in the Star, Ruto factor anxiety as NASA feuds deepen.
Absolutely.
What do we have to say today?
Now, in the Daily Nation, they say big split in Ruto camp for BBI. Now, I'll say this today, and I'll shoot straight and address Kikuyus. Kikuyus sample this. There are two MPs from Rift Valley supporting BBI. One is an MP from Endebes called Robert Pokose, and the other one is from Keyo and is known as Daniel Rono. These two patriots have asked what is wrong with more money being taken down to Mashinani? What is wrong with sharing power with other communities? Turkana North MP Christopher Nakileu says that even though many Tanga loyalists have opposed the proposal, they should change their mind. He says, and I quote, "Some of us who had thrown our weight behind the expanded executive proposal still support it because we believe that the deputy president is likely to benefit from it. He'll be in a position to reach out to more leaders to build a coalition." Kikuyus, there's something that happened here. Kalenjins, Turkanas, and other people from Rift Valley are for BBI. You Kikuyus have been told BBI is not good for you because it is bad. Yet William Ruto's home county of Uasin Gishu is said to gain 11,000 shillings per person from BBI. Kikuyus, who's a fool here?
And when you ask them why it is bad, they say because it is not good. Now, there's been some powerful imagery in the headlines of that lady and those gentlemen standing in front of a State House. Yeah. It's a very powerful
You won't name their names.
What we're seeing here is what Professor Mutahi Ngoni calls elite consensus. It emerges from the school of thought known as elite theory. If the images we are seeing on all of today's front pages have some similarity and deja vu to them, it is because we have seen elite consensus in this country before. In 2002, when we had the Rainbow Coalition. In democratic society, the masses of everyday citizens tend to respond to organization and the initiative of a small number of leaders. When elites coalesce, they shape public discourse, narratives are given life, and what they conclude prevails. And the most successful coalitions are ones that seek to achieve social change goals at the same time as they strengthen the organizations that participate in them. So whereas the 2002 coalition was about gaining power, this coalition is about advancing our country's constitutional order. And granted, for some or even all of them, to be honest, there is also self-interest in what they're seeking to achieve. The difference between these ladies and gentlemen, in contrast to William Ruto, is that they are wielding self-interest with the sword of justice. Their self-interest at least advances the public interest and the common good. It is not simply an insatiable lust for power. What we are also seeing here is the fact that with every passing day, the isolation of William Ruto is ever more certain. The message is clear. The train has left the station, so get out of the way or get run over.
Wow, I like that. And we spoke earlier this week about, this changing political settlement, one that is coalescing around consensus building, this elite consensus that you talk about. So today I'd like to reflect on the events of this week, mostly about where William Ruto may have gone wrong. So the ancient Greeks called it hubris.
This
is the wanton insolence or arrogance resulting from excessive pride or passion. It is a classic temptation of mortals who, finding themselves clothed in the unaccustomed robes of leadership or success, start imagining themselves bulletproofed against disaster, and so tempt the fates.
Love it.
Now think of Antony and Cleopatra, Hitler and Russia,
Yes.
Catherine the Great and her horse.
Yes.
Everyone should look up that story.
Yes.
Those who succumb to hubris convince themselves there's really no risk, no failure.
Yes.
And how could they be when they're smarter, luckier,
Yes.
craftier,
Yes.
and uniquely blessed by both God and destiny?
Right.
But a psychological history of tyrants says that self-destructive leaders gain power in part because they're smart or clever, and then start believing that they're smarter and cleverer than anyone else.
Yes.
They start to underestimate others, and
Yes.
this is the downfall.
Absolutely.
The more power or success they gain, the more they lose the sense of the limits of that power.
Yeah.
And nobody reminds them of those limits. They think they can take big risks and win forever. Now, throughout history, leaders drunk on their own illusions wander into situational cul-de-sacs
Yes.
where they meet one disaster or another.
Yes.
So you have Cambyses the first of Persia, who ruled 529 BC,
Yeah.
and he invaded Ethiopia without ever inquiring what his troops would need for such a journey.
Yes.
And no one dared to challenge him.
Yeah.
And when his troops ran out of supplies, they were reduced to cannibalism.
Yes.
Ruto was asking counties to basically cannibalize themselves after failing to pass BBI.
Yeah.
And Hitler follows much the same path when he sent the Wehrmacht, which is the defense forces, into the Soviet Union in 1941 without any winter clothing.
Yes.
Now, Ruto probably should take quick lessons from them, as well as Greek mythology.
Yeah.
Do not be like Prometheus, who stole fire from the gods, and as a penalty, the head god Zeus chained him forever to a rock,
Yes.
where a vulture would come each day, eat his liver, which would grow back each night. Don't be these guys.
Reminds me of Sisyphus.
Yes.
Sisyphus, the myth
and
of
the
Sisyphus.
stone. But I think my favorite phrase from what you've just said is wanton insolence.
Yeah, for sure. So guys, we have a 3-part criteria that we will use to break down the headlines. We will ask ourselves, is it topical or speculative? Is it repetitive or groundbreaking? Is it thoughtful or just plain lazy?
Yeah.
I'm leaning towards the Daily Nation because
Yes.
they're giving us some insight there.
Yeah, absolutely. Same here. Absolutely.
Truth is written there.
Yes. There's
Do
a
we agree?
split. Yes.
Yeah.
And there's a split for the first time nation. You're right. There's a split in the Ruto camp.
Daily Nation gives us our winning headline onto the political pieces that we call cartoons in this country, where we also have a 3-part criteria. We ask ourselves, is it humorous or dry? Is it satirical or pessimistic? And is it effective or just plain lazy?
In the Daily Nation, you have Ndula, caricature of Uhuru Kenyatta, Raila Odinga, driving a beautiful BBI car.
It's beautiful.
To them, yes, beautiful and shiny. It's big,
It
black
has
and shiny.
space.
It has space. Next to them is a ramshackle of a car. Hanging out is William Ruto trying to enter Uhuru's and Raila's car. Next to him is Moses Kuria, Oscar Sudi, and the horrors of unskilled labor, himself, Irongo Kangata. On top of the car is a wheelbarrow. And Ruto, as he's trying to get out of his ramshackle into the nice, shiny black Benz BBI, is saying, I will not be forced to drive in a no campaign.
Wow.
What a turnaround, guys. Just 1 week.
I mean,
love it.
although he has never outwardly said he opposes
He has.
BBI.
He called 13 MPs, and then he told us there were 113, and he said BBA is not a priority.
But
That
listen,
is not-
I don't blame him.
you don't blame him.
I don't blame him for wanting to not drive the no campaign.
In
That's
any
what I'm
case,
saying.
in any case,
to not be the face of it.
he'll be impeached very soon.
I would respect him more if he took a clear stand.
And said no.
Guys, it doesn't matter. He'll be impeached very soon.
Okay, let's park it. I quite
Second,
like it.
Gado, you have a caricature of himself, Magufuli, President John Pombe Magufuli of Tanzania. And next to him is a lady who's been zipped. And she's Tanzania herself. And there's Magufuli says,
I love this, Gado.
our locally manufactured masks.
Boy, fish and just zip your mouth.
Just zip your mouth. Fantastic cartoon.
Let's leave that.
Gado persona non grata in Tanzania. Next, the star, Lavozon, caricature of Raila Odinga, Uhuru Kenyatta, and William Ruto. And Uhuru Kenyatta has just dropped from a swing.
A slide.
Written
Counties.
counties. And the caption there is round 2, not a walk in the park.
Yeah. And you can see the other two stretching,
Absolutely,
ready
they're
for
stretching for round 2. But let me ask you people, 2 years down, I mean, from 2018 to now, almost 3 years, you expect the state to lose this war? that a guy from Kamagut will bring down BBI? I mean, come on, guys. Let's.
So, guys, between the Daily Nation and I think for me, Gado's cartoon are the contenders here.
I think so as well.
Yeah?
Yeah.
I think we should give them both our winning cartoon.
Absolutely. Excellent.
So we toss the star.
Yeah.
And now our final thought. It is inspired by a book entitled Seeing What Others Don't. The Remarkable Ways We Gain Insights by Gary Klein.
Nice. Before we get there, can I give a summary?
Oh, please.
So this week we were looking at books that are going to help us into the future. On Super Tuesday, we looked at The Pandemic Century, 100 Years of Panic, Hysteria and Hubris by Mark Honigsbohm. And the book was written in 2018, but the author added an additional chapter in light of COVID-19. The book covers 10 cases of pandemics and shows in each pandemic there is never one truth to be found, but a very complex interplay of biology, economics, and linguistics. On Wednesday, our final thought was inspired by a book entitled The Power to Compete, an economist and an entrepreneur on revitalizing Japan in the global economy by Ryoichi and Hiroshi Mikitani. The book discusses how Japan moved from being an economic powerhouse in the 1980s to sort of losing its way as the years progressed. It looks into the protectionist policies that were adopted and how this affected the country's economy. It further examines Abenomics, the economic policies implemented in 2012 to boost Japan's economy. On Thursday, we looked at a Fifth Estate classic, Anti-Fragile, Things That Gain from Disorder by Nassim Nicholas Taleb. In the book, the author explains how systems may actually benefit from disorder. The author divides the world into 3 categories: the fragile, the robust, and the anti-fragile. If one is fragile, they avoid disorder and disruption for fear of the mess that it may make in your life. The robust stand up to shocks without flinching and without changing who you are. But if you're anti-fragile, the shocks make you stronger and more creative. You are better able to adapt with every change you face. And today, we're seeing what others may not see.
Absolutely.
And this is a book about the remarkable ways in which we gain insight by Gary Klein. And it was published in 2013. And now, Dr. Gary Klein is a cognitive psychologist, and he's renowned for his work on how people make decisions in practice rather than in theory. He's published other books such as Sources of Power, The Power of Intuition, and A Practitioner's Guide to Cognitive Task Analysis.
Absolutely.
And so in this book, he basically defines insight as an unexpected shift in the way we understand things. And when you're asked for insights, what someone is really saying is, surprise me, tell me something different about the world, about a market, about a thing. How will it change how I understand those things? So he starts the book off with a story about a police officer, 2 police officers, and they observe a driver in a BMW flicking ashes of his cigarette into his car. Into the car, into the upholstery. And so the police officers question, they're like, why would someone, put ashes into their brand new BMW?
Right.
And the officer says immediately, no, this car is stolen, and they pull it over and they arrest the car thief. Now he calls this flash insight. It's a way in which in that moment, the cops were able to discern that something was very different. Someone who owns a BMW and it is theirs would not ash cigarettes into it. They would take more care with that.
Absolutely.
So he says that to improve performance in decision makings and things like that, 2 things must happen. 1, you must reduce errors, and 2, you must increase insights. And so performance improvement depends upon these things. So he says that thinkers and people who make good decisions are paradigm shifters. They share observations, interpretations, and stories that shift our understanding about particular situations. Now, he argues for a triple path model. I'll be quick. 1, the first path is contradiction. And he says you must find an inconsistency in something you already hold to be true. And so I know 2M will go into this when he talks about hedge fund managers and how they were able to predict things. The second being the connection path, where you find a new coincidence, make connections between past and present. And here I know CS will give us the example of Pearl Harbor and how they were able to do that. Present. And the third thing is creative desperation. Now this one was really interesting. He says that insights need to force you to come up with something new. He says that he gives an example of trapped firefighters who famously learned how to fight fires by setting new fires. So when you create the new fire, it creates a new escape route for you. And he says that if necessity is the mother of invention, then desperation is the father of insight. And lastly, he tells us about a random one, which is coincidence and curiosities. Now, he gives the example of 2 people, Michael Gottlieb, who came up with or led to the discovery of AIDS. And he did this because he noted coincidences in the types of symptoms that gay men began to present in the 1980s. Then the second thing is Alexander Fleming. He noticed the curious behavior of bacteria when it was near mold. It died.
Yes.
And this led to the discovery of penicillin.
Yes.
And so Klein says this is a good idea to look out for these curiosities and coincidences, but he says that only 10% of the insights he investigated were actually found in this way.
Yeah.
So let's hear more about what you guys...
I love it. I love it. You know, the part I loved was how to spot a con, a swindler.
Yeah.
Now, in 1999, Harry Markopoulos, an obscure financial analyst, was working at a place called Rampart Investment Management Company in Boston. I discovered the biggest Ponzi scheme at Wall Street, run by a guy called Bernie Madoff. For those that don't know Bernie Madoff, he's an American financier who executed the largest Ponzi scheme in history, defrauding thousands of investors out of tens of billions of dollars over the course of about 17 years or possibly longer. Now, he was also a pioneer of the electronic trading and also chairman of the NASDAQ in the early 90s. Now, a guy called Frank Casey, one of Markopoulos' colleagues, challenged him to match the outstanding results of Bernie Madoff's investment firm. Markopoulos was skeptical that anyone could achieve such consistent rates of return, but he agreed to study Madoff's success. And there is another detail to this example. Markopoulos was also a certified fraud examiner. So he got a hold of the publicly available data of Madoff's hedge fund, and within minutes knew something was wrong. The numbers just did not add up. Madoff was said to be using a conservative strategy that wasn't designed to yield consistent profits. Yet Madoff was claiming that in his investments were more profitable month after month. In fact, Madoff reported losing money in only 3 months over a period of 7 years. I mean, Madoff could produce 1 to 2% returns every month, 96% of the time, producing a 45-degree curve of profit with no volatility. Ask any financial analyst out there, this is impossible. In essence, what he was actually doing was gobbling up investor money, then altering financial statements to depict profits. It was all a scheme. What's my point here? You guessed it, right? There is someone who has promised Gema and poor people the world as when promised the world when he becomes president, and his name is Ruto. He has offered wheelbarrows, mikokotenis, hair dryers, and some other rubbish. But when counties are offered more cash than they have received, he tells them not to take it. Now, you don't have to be a geek like Markopoulos to see the con. If Wasingishu, Bomet, Kericho, Nandi pass BBI, why is Ruto telling Kikuyus not to pass it? If Wasingishu will get 11,000 shillings per person per year from BBI, why are Kikuyus being told not to accept BBI? Use your heads, Gema. Use your dumb heads.
You had to bring Ruto into our final thoughts.
I had to, man. But I didn't tell them who the con was.
Battle of Taranto. In 1940, at the beginning of World War II, before the US joined the war, France had surrendered, leaving the British to face Germany, Italy, and Japan. On one of the war fronts in the Mediterranean Sea, the Italians were posing a challenge to Britain by restricting British efforts to resupply their forces in Egypt. In response, the British devised a plan to attack a section of the Italian Navy, which was comfortably sheltered in the Bay of Taranto, hence the name. They called this plan Operation Judgment. To maintain secrecy, no written records were made of the planning of the mission, and the mode of attack was to attack the battleships from the air. The Italians thought they were safe from attack because they were in shallow waters. But the British had, however, innovated a way to release torpedoes in a way that would circumvent this challenge. This was to be the first all-carrier air attack in history. First airplanes took off at 9 in the evening on November 11th and reached their targets at 10:58. In less than an hour, the British airplanes launched their torpedoes and put half the Italian fleet out of commission for 6 months. When news of the British success at Taranto got out, this greatly inspired Japanese Admiral Isoroku Yamamoto. I'm sure I butchered that, but I do like the Japanese language, you know. Domo arigato. Anyway, the implications of the attack immediately became apparent to him. He had the insight that the American naval fleet safely anchored at Pearl Harbor might also be a sitting duck, vulnerable to the unexpected air attack. This is what birthed the blueprint for the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor on December 7th, 1941. Ironically, Yamamoto did not approve of Japan's decision to go to war with the United States because he was sure Japan would lose such a war.
Yes.
But he also knew that the war was inevitable because the Japanese army leaders were confident that Japan would prevail, and these leaders had too much political power to be stopped.
Yes.
Because war was inevitable, and despite his reservations, Yamamoto was therefore of the view that perhaps starting the war with a knockout blow would devastate American naval power, and this would be a way for Japan to triumph. Now, interestingly, the Chief of Naval Operations, Admiral Stark of the US, had also seen the implications of the Battle of Taranto and had concluded that if war were to ensue with Japan, then the US was vulnerable at Pearl Harbor.
Yes.
He therefore sent a memo warning of this possibility 2 weeks after the Battle of Taranto and a full year before the attack on Pearl Harbor.
Yes.
Two admirals in two opposing navies quickly grasped the significance of the British attack.
Yes.
They both had the same insight. The Japanese turned that insight into a battle plan for a surprise attack. The Americans lost track of the warning issued by Admiral Stark, the head of the entire US Navy. There are a number of lessons we can draw from this, especially as we get deeper into a prolonged winter of political battles. And there are lessons which we hope our dear president will take up. Lesson 1, insights don't count for much if we can't translate them into action. Lesson 2, Admiral Yamamoto, by drawing the blueprints for Pearl Harbor attack, showed that he subscribed to the Machiavellian school of thought, which GK here told us about a few weeks ago, that you do not do your enemy a small injury. If you must injure your enemy, the injury must be so severe that you need not fear vengeance. You cannot injure your enemy in small installments. Lesson 3, Admiral Stark had recognized the threat a full year before it happened, but it is difficult to maintain vigilance for a long period of time. Daily emergencies create constant destructions, but the price of freedom is eternal vigilance.
I like that. I really like that. Thank you, CS. So on a day where we had winning headline from Daily Nation, winning cartoon from both the Standard and the Daily Nation, I want to leave you with this. Klein has a really quirky recommendation, which is, in order for you to develop your own insights, you must foster serendipity, the random collision of ideas. And so use this. Do not fixate on any one thing that you hold to be true. Take an active stance in considering as many alternatives, politically or otherwise. So be playful. Have a lovely weekend. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Hit like. Find us on TV. We're on GoTV.
God bless.